Okay, so it's 1968 and landmark science fiction movie 2001 comes out. 1969, another science fiction movie with the number 2 and some O's and zeros in the title. That comes out as well. I'm talking Moon 02. From Hammer. So, as this is Filmtastic February, the month celebrating films and books devised by Annie at Obscure Book Adventures, hosted by herself and also Duncan, back away from the donkey, and me, I thought I'd read the novelisation. So, Moon 02. Unlike 2001, is not viewed as any kind of masterpiece at all. In fact, it's viewed as being pretty terrible. You know, it comes out sandwiched between 2001 A Space Odyssey and the actual real-life moon landings, and it involves the moon, hence the title, so should be a success, but unfortunately the budget was so tiny, the approach was, has so many misfires in it that, the view is, even amongst dedicated Hammer fans, that it doesn't really work. You get people talking about the clunkiness of the special effects, the vehicles that look like models from a Jerry Anderson puppet show, the coloured wigs and things like that looking terrible, the lead looking like a grumpy dad, and so on and so on. So perhaps not the best movie ever. The poster looks good. Looks like we're going to get another big science fiction epic, but it's nothing like 2001 A Space Odyssey. In fact, it's almost an inversion of 2001. So whereas the Stanley Kubrick movie is kind of got a lot of human progress and transcendence in it, Moon 02, it's grubby and kind of cynical and downbeat. Okay, so here we have a future where big corporations run everything. Criminals in space. How could that happen? Played by Warren Mitchell with a purple monocle. It's also, whereas 2001 is very much a sort of visual exercise, Moon 02 is full of plot and talking, and would like to be full of action. But, again, budget kind of defuses it all along the way. Another thing, 2001 is sort of almost militantly sexless, whereas in Moon 02 you get the famous Hammer glamour inserted at all sorts of moments. So it's an interesting one to try and do a book of. They brought in none other than John Burke, ace noveliser, who had novelised all sorts of things, many of which I've talked about on here. He did the book of the Hard Day's Night movie, Smashing Time, other Hammer stuff, the Hammer omnibuses where you'd get like 4 novelisations in one paperback. That was him. He wrote his own stuff as well, and he'd written science fiction, and so he comes along to do this, to turn what I've just described into a book. And actually the book is pretty good. I really enjoyed reading it. It does the grittiness well. It's so the shtick was, it was billed as being the first space western. And it has got some western type ideas in it, so it's like the moon as a sort of frontier, but the age of exploration has finished. We're now in more the age of settlement, and like I say, the sort of criminals and landowners taking over. And then you've got the maverick pilot, Bill Kemp, who he's world weary, cynical. He used to be the guy. He was the first man to fly to Mars, but now he's just flying freight ferry around and, hits the bar for a moonflower cocktail as soon as he gets into the spaceport, that kind of thing. So that's a bit like a Western, and there's shootouts and stuff like that. And in case you hadn't spotted all of that, the moon base bar has like Western saloon kind of doors, and you have go-go dancers in giant Stetsons at one point. So it's a little bit like that. It's also a sort of crime story as well. So the basic plot is cynical pilot guy gets involved with a sort of criminal syndicate who want to steal an asteroid that's full of sapphires. And the other part of the plot is to do with a young woman whose brother has gone missing, like mining over on the far side of the moon, and these things end up tangled together. So in the book, he cleverly makes it first person. So you hear cynical, world-weary, pulp hero pilot fellow. You get him, and because he can vocalise lots of things via a character, you get a lot of sort of personality coming out that you wouldn't just get from transcribing the script of the movie. In a book, you've got unlimited budget, and everything's like as good as we can imagine it, provided you've forgotten the film, which I've to some extent managed to do. So it actually is a pretty serviceable kind of science fiction noir kind of crime in space story, and I found some of the jeopardy, there's some sort of survival stuff and some fighting, worked pretty well actually. So yeah, this was good. So as well as reading it for Filmtastic February, it was also CriminOlly's Wasted Weekend. So this was my sort of nod towards that as well, reading a novelisation, which is one of the kind of less respectable kinds of fiction that comes within the sort of trashy fiction sort of definition. So really enjoyed it on so many levels. There's some stuff John Burke simply leaves out, including the Go-Joes, who are a troupe of dancers who bring some of the hammer glamour by doing musical numbers throughout the show. And I'd also say it's a little bit prophetic as well. Not only do you have criminals in space, you also have people drinking cabbage water, which is something happens these days, I believe. It's set in 2021. Yeah, Moon 02. Perhaps best remembered for the opening song sung by Julie Driscoll.